Hola, mi gente. Welcome to another episode of the Wine and Chisme podcast. Today, I have the fabulous, magnificent, beautiful, smart Victoria Jenn Rodriguez with me. How are you, Victoria?
I'm fabulous. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm what's so funny is I was just telling you right before I hit record that we've like quote unquote met on Clubhouse like over 4 years ago. And I remember us being in some of the same rooms and some of the same, different things. And I've been following you on social media for over 4 years since that time.
Amazing.
And I've seen like, even within those 4 years, first of all, you were already a chingona back then, right? I've just seen how you've even leveled up, continued to level up since then. So when your team approached me to be on the podcast, it was the easiest yes. I was like, yeah, for sure, absolutely.
Thank
Like, here's the information, have her schedule.
I love it. And thank you for the work that you're doing because when my team was kind of searching for podcasts, like we learned that there aren't many like consistent, like Latina led podcasts that like have an amazing community and are like doing their thing. So kudos to you. 4 years in doing this podcast and continuing to, bring your community along on your journey. So thank you so much for having me and for the work that you do.
Oh, thank you so much. I know we'll get into all of these things, but it's so crazy when I started the podcast or when I was even starting the thought process of the podcast. And, I released right before the pandemic. Like I released in February and then we went in lockdown like 3 weeks later in March, right? And it's just so crazy, like how much has changed. And when I was talking about it, I worked in like a co-working space. And so people are like, oh my gosh, you're still doing it? Oh, wow, you really said you were going to do it and you're doing it. And I love that. I love how people maybe didn't doubt, but they were like skeptical, I guess. And now they see like, no, it wasn't a joke. I wasn't joking when I said like what I wanted to do with this. And now we're over 4 years in.
Wow, amazing. I wish I started during the pandemic. I wish I started my podcast. We're going to be a year in September, but I wish I started during the pandemic because I feel like that was just an incredible time to build community and to have people had nothing else to do. So they were tuning in, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
And it's so funny because when we like, Clubhouse, I don't even know if people are still on Clubhouse or not, but it was just such an amazing space at
it
that
was.
moment, what people needed for really that first year. It's
Mm-hmm.
what people just really needed to be able to connect because social media, you only get so much. But to have real conversations with people from truly across the world and getting to hear what everybody's experiences was. What was your experience? Like, how did you feel about that point? Before we get into all the things, I just because we were talking about Clubhouse, like, how did you feel about it at that point in time?
I love Clubhouse. Clubhouse was like my place to be. Like I think it was good conversation, it was entertaining, it was good for business, like it was a vibe and it allowed us to connect. And I know for me, I was like yearning for that connection. I'm very much an extrovert. Like I feed off of people's energy. I like to be outside. I love people. I love getting to know people. So not being able to go outside was really difficult for me. So Clubhouse kind of created this space where everybody was. And so it was a good outlet to connect and to build and to, create relationships with people, even though we couldn't go outside.
Yeah. Well, before we get into all of the chisme, we
Yes.
always start with the wine. I
Yes.
don't know if you are partaking or not, but if you are or if you are not, please share what you were drinking with us today.
So I'm a vegan right now and I cut drinking. So I haven't had a drink in several months. But when I was drinking and when I was partaking with the wines, I'm a red girl more than a white girl. And I like more of like the Merlot vibe. I like subtle sweetness, but good, like a spark of sweetness, not dry. And my favorite one, I don't know if you know this, but it's called Culitos.
No.
It's called
Okay.
Culitos, and on the bottle it has like chubby people and their little booties, like from back in the day, like European. Yeah.
Where is this from?
I don't know where it's from. Let me see. Let me see if I do a quick search here. Let's see,
Oh
Culitos.
my gosh, that is freaking like amazing.
Yes, it's a Merlot and it's called Culitos. And let's see, where is it from? I don't know. How do I, let's see. What do I say? Origin, I guess.
Yeah,
Chile, Italy, Germany, and France distributes it to the 40 states.
got it. Oh my gosh, no, I have not heard of that. I'm gonna have to look for it and try it because
Yeah, try it. I mean, I like it. It's one of my favorite, and I love the bottle.
okay, in my head, I'm already like the song, a mover la colita.
Yes, yes,
I'm
yes,
like thinking, oh, a perfect reel having that,
yeah,
bring that to that song.
yeah, yeah. I love Culitos and 19 Crimes.
Yes, 19 Crimes has some good ones. Right now I'm actually drinking. This is the first time I've been waiting to interview them, but I haven't. But I have 2 bottles of this, so I'm like, I'm gonna bust it open.
Yeah,
I'm having Suspiro wines. It's a California rosé
nice.
from Grenache grapes. So, um, I let me try it so I can tell you what it has hints of. Oh, actually, this smells really nice, especially right now during summertime.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Let's see.
yeah,
Definitely has some floral notes and some acidity as well. Oh, that's good.
yeah.
It's really it's definitely has some minerality, which I like. I like a little minerality. And it has some like strawberry and raspberry notes to it.
What does minerality mean?
Like how like when you taste dirt or when you taste
Oh, I
rocks,
never
something like
tasted
that.
dirt.
You never tasted dirt as a kid.
I never ate rocks for a living. No, not
Let's
my
say
thing.
earthy. Like it kind of tastes like earthy, right?
Okay.
That's a well, when you have mushrooms, that's like an earth because that
Yeah,
comes from
yeah.
earth,
I do
right?
love me some mushrooms. I do
Yeah,
love.
this doesn't taste like mushroom, but it does have that like what you would imagine like when the ground gets wet, that smell, what you would
Yeah.
imagine it would taste like, but in a good way.
Okay. Okay. I'm trying to envision it. I'm trying to envision it. Yeah, the ones I mentioned are more like on the they're not bougie. They're like the chill ones. But whenever I go to Napa, I go every year in April is when I have like the super bougie wine, and I'm on one when I'm out there. And I'll be sitting there drinking like this expensive ass wine, have no idea, bonchinchando, not even knowing what I'm drinking, and I'm drinking like a delicacy. But yeah, that's as far
Okay,
as it
well,
goes.
whenever you want to drink, I will let me know and I'll
Okay,
tell you the Latine on wine brand, the Latine
okay,
on tasting rooms that are out there.
amazing. Yes, that's the
Yeah.
ones we go to when I'm in Napa. We go to Latino-owned wineries when we're out there. The Galeos family has a winery out there, and so it's a Latino event that I go for. So it's
Oh
all
yeah,
Latino
yeah.
events. Wine.
Last year I actually hosted La Gran Cosecha for MAVA, which is the Mexican American Vintner Association. So I
Mm.
hosted their like really big event. Uh,
Uh-huh.
and because I also created the very first director of Latine on wine brands that are based in the US. So I have
Okay.
relationships with a lot of the vintners out there, and they're so amazing, and the stories are always because they're always so there's a similar thread, but they're always very different, right? And it's so awesome to just hear all of these stories and why people decided to do it because so often if you don't grow up around it, you don't know about it, right? Like you're like,
Right.
I don't know why you think it's bougie, you think it's this, you think it's that, when it doesn't really have to be. I mean, the best wine is the wine that you like.
I like that. Yeah. Okay. That's what I'm gonna say.
Yes. Well,
The best
salud,
one is the one that I
salud.
like. I don't care if what do you call them? If you're a sommelier, like I don't care. You don't know what you're talking about. It's the one that I like. That's the best one.
Exactly. Exactly. It's the one that you like because everybody has different palates. That's the thing. Like
Right.
I am not somebody who likes Sauvignon Blancs from New Zealand because I hate grapefruit and that's all I can taste when I taste
Yeah.
Sauvignon Blancs from New Zealand is the grapefruit and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh.
For the dirt flavor.
I remember the dirt flavor. Exactly, exactly. That just tells you what kind of kid I was, right? I was
Y
even,
Jessica, ay, comiendo dirt ahí.
you know
So,
what? I was also a catcher in softball, and when I've dirt has definitely got in my mouth.
yeah, I love it. I love it.
Well, I'm super, like I said, I'm super excited because I have this history with you that I know you weren't even aware of.
Thank you.
But that's what I think makes certain people like just they just are kind of they know how to level up like that, right? When people are drawn to you and people are so going back, I know you're an East Coast girl.
Mhm.
Um, was that how you were your entire life? Were you somebody who, when you were a kid, you were drawn to people and people were drawn to you? And was that something that was a thread that you saw in your family as well?
So, born and raised in New York by a single dad. My mother had a big personality, and my father has a big personality. So I have a big personality. And even as a kid, I always was kind of like the center of attention. And I think that follows through with me as an adult. I think God always envisioned me to be a light, and I just continue to show up in that way. And so, uh, when I was a kid, if you ask my family, they would describe me as like a terror because I would go to my tia's house, go right to her room, get her red lipstick, and literally draw all over the walls in the house. I would flush things down the toilet. I would pull the posters down of like, who was their favorite brand? Maluna or something like that. I would tear the posters down in their room. Like they wanted to kill me. That's how they would describe me. And I just had a lot of energy as a kid. And a funny story in my family is one day on a school trip, we went to the zoo, went to like a baby zoo for like little kids. And there were these little chicks. And so I picked up a chick and I was so excited that I ended up choking the chick to death. And so
Oh,
they call my dad and they're telling my dad how I killed this chick. And my dad's like, and they're telling him I need therapy. They're telling him like I need
well,
help.
they're thinking you're like a psychopath or
Yeah.
something.
And my dad is like, you know how many chickens I killed in Puerto Rico? My daughter's gonna be fine. And hung up the phone. And it's like one of the favorite family stories to tell. So I had a lot of energy as a kid, and that holds true as an
You
adult.
know what it reminds me of? Of Mice and Men, of Lenny.
Yeah, yeah. I was just so excited. It was the cutest little thing. And yeah, it happened.
You literally love that chick to death.
I did. I loved it to death. That's exactly what happened.
Oh my gosh. That is so sad for the chick, but
It
it's
is.
still kind of a funny because
It is a very funny story, especially
yeah,
dad's response. It's
yeah,
hysterical.
like she'll be fine. You
Right.
said I want to kind of touch on something. You said you were raised by a single dad. Obviously, within the Latino community, you don't hear that very often. So being raised by a single dad, did that I think even like my sister being the youngest of three girls is very much a daddy's girl, right? What kind of dynamic do you think that played in like the things that you liked to do growing up? Did that make you more tomboyish? Did that make you more like, did he encourage the girly side? Like, how was that growing up?
Yeah. So it's interesting because I believe like my work ethic comes from my dad. He used to wake me up at like 4 in the morning to go to a restaurant in New York City. He was the manager there. We had to open it. I would sleep in the booth. So I would see like how hard he worked. So a lot of my work ethic comes from him. A lot of my, I would say, confidence uh, comes from him and just the way that I handled myself. My first job out of school was on Wall Street. And I think growing up with a dad really prepared me for that because I had thicker skin, I believe, growing up with my dad. But I always maintained my femininity. Like a girl's girl, love makeup. I would take my tia's lipstick. That was my thing. I would go straight to the makeup. So I was always very
But
much
you
a
were
girl,
writing on the walls.
literally writing on the walls. And even though my dad raised me as a single dad, like my mom was still in my life. So I would definitely still hang with my mom and see my mom. And I was always surrounded by the women in my family. So I had a lot of female influence on me, even though I was raised by a single dad.
So, although your mom was in your life, did you ever question like why it was your dad raising you versus your mom, especially as a little girl, right? Like I would think that oftentimes if you're a little girl, maybe unless maybe you're not really connecting with your mom and you're always at each other's throats, as long as she wasn't a chicken.
Yeah. Well, I asked to live with my dad. So the way that I was born, you're getting all the chisme and wachinche right now. The way that I was born, um, my dad was married, my mom was married. They both cheated on their spouses and had me. So I consider myself a love child. And what they did is they both left their spouses, got together, and raised me together until I was about, I would say, 7, 8. My dad moved to Florida for a job opportunity. So I lived with my mom for a while. And I used to walk to school by myself. I used to walk home by myself because my mom was at work. So the school found out, called my dad and was like, you better do something or else we're going to hand her over to child services. Like, you can't have a little girl walking home by herself and nobody's home. So my dad was like, well, then I'm going to take her. And then I told my mom, I was like, yeah, I want to go live with my dad. So that's how I ended up living with my dad. And then from there on, I just continued to grow up with him from like the age of 9 onward.
And was he still in Florida when you moved with him, or had he moved back to
Yes,
New York?
I met him in Florida. We lived there for a few years and then ended up moving back to New York.
Oh, wow. That's so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That's so crazy because like I said, oftentimes you don't hear that. You
Yeah.
only hear that, but unless it's like a widow situation but you normally don't hear that. So that's awesome that your dad was like, yeah, like I'm taking her then, like
Well,
without hesitation.
the funny story is obviously when my mother got pregnant, he didn't want to have me because he was married, right? So he was like, oh, but my mother decided that she wanted to keep me. And the legend goes that, once he got to the hospital and he saw me, the rest is history. My mother also named me after my father. My father's name is Victor. So like immediately there was kind of like this connection there. And we always say like we saved each other because my siblings all grew up very different than I did. Uh, and my father basically had to become a better man as a result of raising me on his own.
So what kind of relationship, if any, do you have with your siblings not growing up together in the same household and under the circumstances that you were born and raised?
Yeah, so my family is like the United Nations. So my mom was married. So I have a sister who is African and white. And then I have other siblings who are Mexican and white. And then from my father's side, I have Puerto Rican siblings. So we're like kind of like all meshed. But my Black sister, her and I actually spent a few years growing up together. So her and I are the closest. And then I have two younger sisters who live in Florida. And my mother actually passed away. She passed away about 10 years ago from lymphoma. And she had two more girls after she had my sister and I. And she was kind of like trying to like make up, right? Because when she had my sister and I, she wasn't ready to be a mom. She had a crazy upbringing. She just wasn't ready. So she had these other two little girls in Florida. She was at the PTO meetings, like she was heavy involved in everything. And unfortunately, she passed away. And she was like the link to my little sisters in Florida. But now they're grown, they're like in their 20s. So now our relationship, now they're adults. So now our relationship is very different than what it was before. And then my older sister and my brother, we have an interesting dynamic. I know I can, if I need anything, I can call them, but that is a relationship that continuously grows. And it has a lot to do with, you know, my family leaving them to raise me.
Yeah.
So you know that hurts kids, and they don't forget that. They carry that, you know, into their adult life. So it is all love, and we are all, I think, uh managing the relationships as best that we can. But it's kind of stuff that isn't our fault. Like we didn't ask our parents to handle themselves in that way, right? We didn't ask for that to be our childhood, but that's what it was.
When you're growing up, when you move back to New York, you have, you know, you're with your dad. What kind of like environment, or did you take those things, or how did you use all of that? Maybe you don't even realize as you're a kid, you don't realize like how you use all of these things to kind of forge your path. But now that you're an adult, have you ever looked back at all of the things that you went through at that time and figured out like, okay, oh wow, I didn't realize that this is what I used to do this, or this is what I used to handle this situation. Have you kind of ever gone through that?
My dad, his parenting style, like I was very independent as a kid. Like my dad wasn't super strict. He kind of let me spread my wings. And I think as a result of that, it created this kind of sense of ownership over like my individuality and just how I move in the world. So I think that definitely added a lot of influence to who I am today. Um, I would say that I would travel a lot as a kid. I would travel alone. Like I would hop on planes and be bumped up to first class because the stewardess need to look me over. So as a kid, I was introduced to first class, and now I go first class as a child. So I always say like that was like a foreshadowing. Like I was always meant to be in first class. Even when I was a little kid, I was in first class. Even though like it wasn't because my parents could afford it, it was because I was traveling alone.
Where would you
So
travel by yourself?
I would travel to Puerto Rico every single summer. My dad would send me there every single summer. So that's where I
Oh my
would
God.
go. Yeah. So a lot of like my cultura and a lot of my Latinidad and how I identify with my Latina side of the family, because my mother was white, Irish, and Polish and Italian. I identify more with my Latina side because I grew up with my dad, but also I would spend every summer in Puerto Rico with my family.
Oh my gosh. I've been to Puerto Rico once, but it was like for a day, as we were traveling to the US Virgin Islands because my tío used to live there. Um, and so it was like a little stopover, and then we went to the Virgin Islands.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I want to go back as an adult and experience it as an adult. I want to go back to the Virgin Islands as an adult.
Nice.
Um, I know you said like you're very okay. First of all, so my bad because I completely forgot to read your bio. Because I just was so this how excited I was. I was just like, let's get into it, girl. Let's go. I'm gonna go back and read your bio because some people might be like, I don't know what she's talking about. I mean, we can get onto it, but Victoria is a master mindset and business consultant, acclaimed international keynote speaker, and is the host and executive producer of the Banking on Cultura podcast. As a strategic visionary thinker with over 2 decades of experience, she has trained over 20,000 leaders and entrepreneurs on how to optimize performance while maintaining a focus on emotional intelligence, reflection, and empathetic leadership. The press often refers to Victoria Jenn as imposter syndrome killer, with significant results across industries worldwide. Her corporate clients have ranged from small Fortune 500 and include Amazon, iHeartMedia, Comcast, NBC Universal, Barclays, BlackRock, Citi, Coca-Cola, Morgan Stanley, Moody's, Jet, Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, PwC, Food Bank of New York, and many more. Oh, that's all? That's all? She's the CEO of the Dare to Leap Academy, an online education platform where ambitious women come to get unstuck and make the transition from corporate to entrepreneurship without losing their financial security. She's the host of the wildly popular podcast Banking on Cultura that focuses on the vibrancy and complexity of Latino culture, entrepreneurship, and the what is it, Binchinche?
Bochinche.
Bochinche? Is that
Bochinche,
that's
it's chisme.
yeah, I was like, it's the other version of Chisme.
Yes.
With over 11 million impressions and counting. The podcast also serves as a hub for organizations to learn how to market and do business with the Latino community. She's also the founder of the Female Collaborative Inc., a nonprofit focused on revolutionizing the way women work and do business together. She sits on the executive board of the Bronx Global Learning Institute for Girls, a charter school dedicated to creating the next generation of female global leaders in the South Bronx. She has a social media footprint of over 150,000 followers, and her engagement rate is above industry standards, with women of color being her largest demographic, which we love to see. I mean, that's just, just a little thing you do. No worries, just a little thing. You were saying you got your first job out of school was with Wall Street. So I want to kind of help me connect the dots from going to school and then, wherever you did post school, whether it was going to college or university or whatever, and then saying, I think as a Latina, I think I should go into Wall Street, because that's like a really big male dominated space. Right. So I would love for you to help connect the dots of how that happens.
Yeah. So I was the first one in my family to go to college. I went to Baruch in New York City, and I majored in finance and investments. And I majored in finance and investments because I knew I wanted to make money. That's something I was very clear on. And the school was very much immersed within the financial district. So we would have all the large firms come and recruit from our school. And my major was finance and investment. So I was learning about the stock market. I was learning about the space. And so I naturally did an internship at Lehman Brothers when I was still in college, and then got a full-time offer. So after college, I had a job and I started working on Wall Street. So that's how that came about. But talking about foreshadowing, that restaurant that my dad used to take me to when I was a little girl was on Wall Street. It was in
really?
Yes, it was. So I used to look at that bull that is iconic in New York City, downtown on Wall Street as a little girl. And then
is that little girl still there?
I think they removed her. It was just like a campaign that they were doing, but the bull is still there.
Yeah.
But the little girl's not there anymore. But yeah.
You got a lot of foreshadowing in your life.
I know. Isn't that crazy? I was like, oh wow, this is so interesting.
Yeah. That is so cool. Like the foreshadowing of getting bumped up to first class, because you're like, I'm a first class woman, even as
even as a little girl. Like, couldn't tell me nothing. Like, put me in first class. Yeah.
And your dad, the restaurant your dad manages on Wall Street, where your first job was,
exactly.
that it was just like the universe is really placing you in these things. I love that. So how was it? How was that experience working on Wall Street, not only as a woman, but as a Latina? Because already, like I said, male dominated space. So women aren't, as actively recruited, but then being a Latina on top of it can add layers. of complexity to how people look at you. So how was that experience?
Yeah, it was amazing. I loved working on Wall Street, and call it naiveness, but or whatever, but like, yes, I knew I was a minority in terms of my gender and also my nationality and my culture, but I felt like I belonged in that space. I would go to Brooks Brothers, I would wear the suits, I would rock my curls, I would have a tattoo on my ankle, and they probably thought I was ghetto walking in there, but you really couldn't tell me nothing. I was loud, I would ask questions, but I knew my shit, and I would get things done. Like, you had no other choice but to like respect it, even though I know some of those brokers looked at me like with a side eye, like, who's this chick? Who did they let in the building? Uh, but I think a lot of it has to come with growing up with a single dad. Like, so I felt very comfortable around a lot of men. Like, I never had a problem being in a space with men. And I learned a lot when I worked on Wall Street. I learned my first lesson when I was interning, and a mentor of mine brought me to a trading desk to kind of like shadow. There was a whole bunch of dudes on the trading desk. They're cursing crazy. And so when he comes to me at the end of the day, he was like, what do you think about the experience? And I was like, it was incredible. Had me sitting back in my seat, and all I could think about was like, wow, holy shit, this is going to be me. And the next day, the mentor calls me and she said, so what did you think about the experience? And I was like, it was amazing. She was like, I have some feedback to share with you. And I'm like, okay. She's like, the brokers thought that it was inappropriate for you to use the word shit. Meanwhile, these men were cursing up a storm, F word here, B word there, like sailor mouse. But here was a girl who was cursing, who was younger, who was Latina, and they thought it was inappropriate. So that was kind of like my first lesson of, so you can't do what they do because you're going to be judged. So keep that in mind. And, you know, that lesson kind of carried with me throughout the years that I was on Wall Street. And it was a great place for me to start. It introduced me to wealth. I went to basketball games courtside. I went to beautiful homes. I ate at the best restaurants. I learned what arugula was. I thought arugula was cheese, and I had to learn that the hard way when I went to a steak restaurant, ordered arugula, and I was like, "This is cheese. This is lettuce. This is not cheese." And they're like, "Yeah, arugula is salad." Wait, I had to learn that the hard way. Okay, embarrassing myself. But it was a great place for me to start my career and to just grow into a leader.
You know, you've referenced the thick skin that you've gotten from growing up with your dad. Was he somebody, I know you said he gave you a lot of independence and a lot of freedom, but was he somebody who was encouraging with his words, or was he somebody who gave like those backhanded compliment type of things? Like, how did he, like, what was that effect, or how did he kind of help you with that thick skin? Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I think the thick skin came from my dad, also came from my mom. Like, my mom was strong. My mom was a badass. My mom was, when I learned her story as an adult, I was like, wow, like, this woman is freaking incredible. Even though when I was younger, I blamed her for leaving. Like, I didn't feel that way about her. But as an adult, right, we learn and we're wise, and we are more empathetic to the decisions that our parents made. So a lot of my strength comes from both of them. Also, growing up in New York City, I think New York City is one of those places where it's like show up or show out or get kicked out. Like, you know, it's one of those places that it literally breeds beasts, you know what I mean? And then Wall Street, also just a space where you had to like, you were thrown into the fire all the time. So all of these things. But my father is a gift that keeps on giving and a blessing in my life. And he has always, always, always encouraged me, always made me feel like I was unstoppable, always made me feel like I can do anything. And even now, like, he'll see me doing things and he's like, wow, you look beautiful. Or that's incredible, honey. I'm so proud of you. He's always been like that throughout my whole entire life.
Oh, I love that. I love to hear that. We always love supportive dads,
Yes.
right? We always love supportive parents and supportive family and friends. I mean, regardless, wherever you can get that support, because not everybody has, you
Yeah.
know, blood relatives that they can count on. So wherever you find your family and can find that support, we love that for you. So how you were in Wall Street for several years. What was the prompt that made you get out? When were you just like, okay, I'm done with Wall Street? And what was the next thing that you were looking forward to doing?
So I worked in a couple of different industries when I was in corporate. I worked on Wall Street, consumer product goods, healthcare. I even worked on legislation in Washington and Albany. And my last corporate gig, I was heading up talent management at Johnson and Johnson. This was 7 years ago when they asked me to move to Tampa. Now, no shade to anybody's in Tampa, but I'm more of a Miami girl. Like that's where I want to go. I'm not trying to go to Tampa. And so I took the severance, bowed out, and then I started to look for another job because entrepreneurship wasn't something that I was ever introduced to. Nobody in my family was an entrepreneur. So it wasn't something that I was like aspiring to do. And when I got let go from Johnson and Johnson and went on my interviews with other companies, I was making it to final round, but I wasn't able to close. And I like to think of myself as a closer. So I'm like, what the hell is going on here? So I took it as a sign from God to just bet on myself, do my own thing, and see how far I could go. Worst case scenario, I can go back to corporate. I have a network. I was there 15 years. Like, I can always go back. Like, I know how to find a job if I need to find a job. But 7 years later, we're still doing this entrepreneur thing, still on this crazy journey and roller coaster, and wouldn't change a thing.
I so I always say there's two kinds of parents, right? You have the entrepreneurial parents that, especially within the Latino community, or maybe other, but you have the entrepreneurial parents who understand that journey and are very encouraging to their kids to find their own path. And to then you have the not like the corporate parents, my parents, your parents, who were never entrepreneurs, who were like, no, you go to school, you get a job, you get your stability, you get da 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 da
Right.
da, right? And then 2020 comes, boom, nobody has stability anymore,
Right.
right? It's like, and I think more and more we learn, and I think I learned this along the way as well, is like everybody's replaceable in corporate.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, like I was reading something that they're like, oh yeah, we had a coworker who passed, and the next day their job was posted. Like it's no heart, right? It's ruthless. Um, so I get that. Like I didn't have entrepreneurs in my family as well. You became like I became an accidental entrepreneur. It sounds like you came, but when
Mm-hmm.
you decided I'm going to do this whole journey on myself, what was the thing that you were like? What was the thing that you wanted to do that you didn't see anybody else doing?
It wasn't even something that I didn't see anybody else doing. I was just like, what do I do well and how can I make money from it? So at the time, I was doing talent management, I was doing interview training, I was recruiting for Johnson and Johnson. So I knew how to have a successful interview. I knew how to write a powerful resume to get noticed. So my first business, I was doing interview training and resume reviews because that was a skill set I already had. I knew I was good at it and people started paying me for it. So I was like, okay, well, this is my first business. I'm a career coach. And that's how I started. And over the last 7 years, I've reinvented myself. I've pivoted. I've, thought I was going left and then no, sorry, we're going right. And now I'm in a season where I am anchored. And because I've been on this crazy journey, because I've been able to make this transition, a lot of women were asking me, hey, how'd you do this? Like, how were you able to leave corporate? How are you actually making money right now? So I decided to launch the Dare to Leap Academy, which is an online learning platform where I teach women how to make that transition and put them through the same framework that I use to make the transition and never go back, with an emphasis on showing them how to go after corporate and government contracts. Because as a consultant, right now, all of my previous employers are now my clients. So how do you do that? How do you actually get corporate to pay you not as an employee, but like as a contractor, as a speaker, as a facilitator, as a consultant? And so now I teach women to do exactly what I did so that they don't have to make the same mistakes that I did, right? Just because I didn't have a network and I didn't have anyone teaching me the rules doesn't mean that women that come after me or women who want to do what I'm doing have to suffer the same consequences that I did. They can learn from my mistakes, right? And accelerate their process. So now I have this learning platform and I also consult corporate. I'm a keynote speaker, flew out all around the world to talk about mindset and emotional wellness, which I love to talk about, which essentially help folks just get comfortable in their own skin and own their cultura and own their magic, their vibrancy, their individuality, because that is the competitor advantage that many of us, especially people of color, like to check at the door because we were taught to do that. We were taught to put our head down. We were taught to follow the path. We were taught not to talk too long, pin your head back, don't attract too much attention, like just go get your benefits, get your money, and then get out, right? So we just follow the same path when we may not necessarily want that path, or we haven't been introduced to another way to live life and make money for ourselves and our families. And that's what I'm trying to introduce to our community.
It's so true because I've heard this so many times where you're just like, we're told we just are put the blinders on, right? Keep your head down, put your blinders on. And then there's times where that gets reinforced that you should do that, because I know for myself, and I want to ask you if you experience this. I know for myself, I would be labeled as abrasive, as being too, like, oh, you're too much, like people, you're too loud, you're too much, and this and that. And then, there have been times where I shrunk myself to, because I didn't want to be seen as somebody who was abrasive and somebody who wanted to pick on people, or that, because that's not who I am. That's not who I, but I felt like people would take who I am and negatively turn it on me. Is that something that you
Oh, yeah.
experienced?
Yeah. My entire corporate career, the feedback was always like, Victoria, you're amazing. You're an asset to the team, but you're too much. Like, you need to dim it down, quiet down, don't wear that suit, everything. I believe that, especially as Latinas, like that's just who we are. Like we're just spicy. That's just who we are. We're vibrant. That's our culture. We're meant to stand out. And it makes people uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I do a lot of this work, because many of us lose ourselves in the process or just are so accustomed to faking it that we don't even have an identity anymore. We just sound and look like everybody else, and we're lost in the sauce, but we just continue to go. We just continue to do it because it's all that we know. And we don't really like take the time to like figure out like who we are and what we really want and what really makes us happy, and how do we want to make money and how do we want to live this life, right? Because we only got one. But when you spend so many years and have all this preconditioning and this generational trauma that's just passed on to you, it's difficult to like break free of that and to be courageous and bold enough to say, you know what? That's not for me. I don't want to do it that way. I want to do it my way. And so we need spaces where we can see examples of people who look like us doing it so
Yeah.
that we can believe that we can do it, right? And then we can start this process of betting on ourselves.
Oh, girl, that is so true, because last year when I got let go from my job in 2023, I realized, and then I was like doing stuff with the podcast, and I was very fortunate. My now husband, right? Then boyfriend, then fiance, now husband, had just moved in. We had just moved in together. And he was like, no, take your time, do whatever. And then I was applying to stuff and things again, same with you. It just wasn't hitting. It either was like I wasn't finding what I wanted, or I would find something that was close, but then nothing else would, like, I would just get stuck at a certain pace or place, and then nothing would continue. And then I got hospitalized for a week in December. I ended up in the hospital. And that, like, when I started going through everything of all the health issues that I've had, all of my uterus issues, right? And I'm gonna have to get surgery. Was like, okay, well, it doesn't really make sense for me to try to find a place, because right now with what I have, like if I change insurances, that would mess everything up. So just
Right.
stick. And then when my husband a few weeks ago asked, what are you gonna do once you're all recovered and everything? And I was just like, what do you mean? He's like, are you gonna look for some, like, what are you gonna do for, for work? And I panicked. And I didn't panic because I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I panicked because I was like, I never want to go back into corporate again. Like, I need to make this work. I need to figure out what I have to do. I need to make whatever I need to do to make the podcast or to make speaking or to make event. Like, I need to make it work because I no longer have a plan B. And that's what scared me more than anything, is not it was going back to corporate. Because I know in my heart I don't ever want to go back into corporate again.
Yeah.
And so when you're saying this, I'm like, oh yes. Inside, I'm like, yes, yes, I feel you, girl. I feel it. I feel it. It's
Yeah.
so true. And right now, the fastest entrepreneurs are Latino owned businesses. So there is something to everything that you're saying. But the one thing that I think a lot of people try and figure out, right, is how they're going to level up. Maybe they found something they're doing. Everybody's about their side hustle. And let me just say, if you're not an entrepreneur, it's okay. Like, I feel like the entrepreneurial life is like made to be so sexy, and it really is not. Like, it's a lot of hard work, and you stay up a lot of nights. There's sometimes never a day off. And I mean, yes, you get that flexibility, but you also don't get that certainty of a paycheck every 2 weeks, right? Like, there's a lot of give and take when it comes to the entrepreneurial life. But I love that you are taking your, like, the things that you've learned through your mistakes and through your failures and everything, and trying to create a path for others so they don't have to do that. I want to know, like, the biggest thing is what you put is how they get clarity and pursue this entrepreneurial life without losing financial security, because that is a very real worry for so many when they're starting that entrepreneurial life. So obviously go to her academy, right? If you want to know all the things, but just on a very surface level type of thing, how do you guide people through that to be able to have the confidence to step away and not feel like they're losing their financial, ceiling or floor?
Yeah. So a lot of the women that I work with are still in corporate, right? Looking to make the transition, which I actually recommend. Like, yes, keep your job, keep all the benefits, keep getting your check, and build your business on the side. Let's start making money in your business on the side, because once you start making the money, then you start building your confidence. You start to validate this journey. You're like, oh, well, wait, hold on. I could do this. Like, I'm getting paid to do this, And let's build up your business so that when you do give the deuces to corporate, you never have to go back, right? But then I work with women who are like, I don't care about any of that. I want to go 10 toes down. Like, let's go all the way in. And we go all the way in, right? And we build their business model and they start making money. You know what I mean? 80% of the participants in my program make back their investment within 3 months, because it's a formula, right? But the secret is you have to actually execute the formula. Like, a lot of people are joining programs, getting coaches and doing all the things, but they're not executing on what they're learning. They're not implementing anything. They're not showing up for themselves. And nothing is going to work if you don't show up, if you don't put in the work. Like, there's no cheat code. There is no cheat code. Nobody's going to come to your door and save you. Like, you literally have to show up just like you would show up every day in your 9 to 5. The difference is that now self-discipline kicks in, because there's nobody to monitor you. It's you against you. every single day. And I always say that your business is a reflection of you. Like if you have the self-discipline, if you're putting in the work, you're going to see that reflect in your bank account. But if you're handling it like a hobby, or if you're half-assing it, you're going to make half-ass money. You know what I mean? That's just what it is. Like if you don't have a system, if you don't have a structure, if you haven't built a foundation, you don't have a real business. You have a hobby. However, once you start making money outside of your 9 to 5, I always say, like, you're an entrepreneur. If you figured out how to make money outside of your employer, you're an entrepreneur. But just because you are an entrepreneur doesn't mean you'll be a successful entrepreneur. And that's where coaching comes into play. And that's why it's so important for you to pay someone who has done what you're trying to do so that you can accelerate your growth. Like me, I spent over 30 grand on coaching. Like I'm staying dropping money into coaching because I'm like, listen, teach me. Like I'm trying to get to this bag as fast as I can. I'm trying to build my brand as fast as I can. Like that's the cheat code. The cheat code is paying someone who's done it already and using their formula so that you can get to the bag quicker, right? And collapse time, right? So that you're able to go fast instead of trying to figure it out on yourself or going to Google University, YouTube University, and thinking you're going to get all the answers there. You're not, right? So if you're interested in entrepreneurship and you're thinking about it, I would say, like, seek out somebody that you resonate with that is doing what you want to do, and pay them so that they can show you how to do it. Instead of taking the vacation, instead of buying the bag, instead of going the shoes, instead of spending money on Uber Eats, we're spending crazy money on Uber Eats with all the fees and all the things. Like, please save the coins and invest in somebody who can show you this game. That's what I wish I did 7 years ago. Because if I would have did that 7 years ago, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now. I would be way further. But that's my journey. And that's why God is using me as a vessel to teach women how to accelerate so they can pass me. Like, I want you to pass me. I want you to make more money than me. I want you to blow up. Like, that's what I want, right? Like, learn from my mistakes and blow up. Because now that I'm in it and I actually have my own coaches who are helping me get to the next level, who I'm getting an ROI from, like, I know the value that comes with that. So stop shortchanging yourself. Stop shortchanging yourself. Like, remove the scarcity mindset, because that's what it is. It's just a scarcity.
Oh, yeah, totally. And I fully admit that I have to, like, get out of my head a lot of times too. I'll say something and I'm like, I'll stop myself mid-sentence and reframe what I was about to say.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, no, that's not what I want to put out there. Like, that's not where I want my words to go. I want my words and my actions to reflect this, not this. So oftentimes, it's happened countless times where I've changed it. Has there been a time that you exude confidence, Victoria? You exude it. You're like, yes, but has there been a time when you weren't sure or you failed at something? Because failure is often you learn way more than success through failure. Has there been a failure or a time where you doubted yourself and then you were like, and what was it that helped you pick yourself up and move towards what you really wanted, towards that positive, instead of staying in the negative, staying in the hole?
Yeah, I mean, there's been countless times where I've handled myself wrong in a meeting and lost a lot of money. I've had to pay Uncle Sam because I didn't know the tax code. Like, I failed multiple times, and I want to fail. I want to fail fast so that I can reroute and then try again. Like, so the reason why I've been reinventing myself is because I'm learning from failure. Like, I'm learning, okay, this doesn't work. This didn't go well. I need to do this. I need to show up differently in this space. Okay, this worked well. Let me double down on this. Like, that's how I'm able to grow. And I believe that failure actually breeds confidence, because now you have experience that you're able to take with you into different spaces. But even today, like, I gave a keynote earlier this week and I was so nervous and I was like, why the hell am I so goddamn nervous? Like, I do this all the time. Like, what is happening? But for some reason that day, I just was on one. Like, I felt nervous and nobody could tell, but I was literally like shaking on stage. And I was like, what the hell is happening to me? And I had to come home and journal about it because I'm like, why was I nervous? So even the most confident person that you may see and think like, oh, wow, they have it all together. Oh my God, like they never make mistakes. They're just so confident. Just know that a lot of the same insecurities you have, they have. The only difference is that they do it anyway. That's the only difference. They just do it anyway.
I always think that nerves just means you care. You know,
Yeah.
nervous
You're
because
the
if
second person that told me that because my girlfriend just told me that. When I told her I was so nervous, she was like, that's a good thing. That just means that you really care about what you're doing. And I was like, okay.
yes, I think about it, right? I think anytime you walk on a stage, no matter how many times you do it, even if you have even the tiniest of nerves, you're like, you're always psyching yourself up before you get on, regardless, because you care. If you
Mhm.
didn't care, you'd just be like, whatever,
Right.
if and so I think it's a good thing when you're nervous because that's what I think it means you care. And um from all of this, like you said, you're almost at your 1 year anniversary of banking on Cultura.
Mhm.
What is like tell us about banking on Cultura and the things that you share on there that you've kind of that's I'm sure helped you travel through your journey.
Yeah. So Being Cultura actually came about when I was in a very uncomfortable place in my life. I was turning 40 and I felt like I was lost. Like I wasn't anchored. I felt like even though from the outside it looked like I was successful and I was making money and all of that, but there was something emotionally, spiritually, mentally off. So I took this trip to Costa Rica. It was a spiritual retreat. And I was like, I gotta go find myself. Like, I gotta figure out like what this next decade's gonna be. Like, I need to get anchored. I need clarity. So went to Costa Rica and I got the clarity. And I connected with myself in a deeper way than I've ever connected with myself before. And it was then that God told me, like, listen, Toots, you need to provide the tools and resources to your community. You need to double down in your community. You need to pour into it. You need to tap into your culture. Like that is where your magic is. That is the next step I want you to take. And that is when Baking on Cultura was born. So Baking on Cultura is a podcast that really mobilizes Latinos to embrace their Latinidad and really understand their history and culturally why they are so significant and why Latinos are so magical and why when you go into the office or you go into these spaces and you're trying to tone down who you are and where you come from, how much of a disservice you are doing to yourself because Latinos have 3.4 trillion buying power. We're the largest community that's making purchases online. We're the largest community consuming content online. We are the future workforce of this country. So we are highly influential. We are the community that people want and need to connect with if they want anything to happen. And so we need to own that, right? So the podcast is really a place for you to understand your cultura and embrace your Latinidad. And we provide examples of entrepreneurs who did just that and are fucking killing it. Sorry, I'm cursing. I hope that's okay.
No, that's okay.
Okay, good. So, and are killing it. And it's by embracing their cultura that they've been able to differentiate themselves. So not only are you learning about your cultura and the magic of your cultura, but also you're getting these plays and strategies from entrepreneurs who are killing it, right? Who have made the mistakes and they're giving you the plays for free on this podcast. So I invite guests on my podcast who I want to learn from. And I use my podcast as a way to build a relationship with them and also ask them the questions that I literally have for my own business because I want to learn from them. But I know it's also helpful for the community as well, right? So it's a great place for those who are aspiring and current entrepreneurs that are seeking real strategies, like tangible things that they can do in their business to actually make money. And then, of course, we throw in some bochinche or some chisme, but that's also a cultural dynamic, right? That you need to learn. Like chisme comes to a specific segment within the community, and then there's another segment that uses bochinche, but it means the same thing, right? But if you're not educated on that, you wouldn't even know that, right? About how complex our culture like really is. And so we entertain you, but we also educate you. And we also serve as a hub for organizations to learn how to do business and market to us because they don't know. They think we're all Mexican, right? Or they think we're all Cuban, or they think we're all Puerto Rican. Like they don't understand how layered our community is and how to talk to us. So we're a hub teaching them how to do that so that they know like how powerful our community is and why they actually need to partner with Baking Cultura, partner with you if they want to get in front of our community.
Yeah. I love that because when I'm in New York, I'm Puerto Rican. Everybody thinks I'm Puerto Rican when I'm in New York.
Yeah.
Right. And when I'm actually even here often, people are like, they never know what ethnicity I am. And but I do get Puerto Rican probably more than anything else outside of California. And but it's true when you're in California, most I mean, we have, there's a large Honduran community, there's a large Guatemalan community, there's but it depends on the city and where you're at. And but obviously we're being in California, we are, we have a vast Mexican community.
Right.
Same
Mm-hmm.
in Texas, but there's a big Cuban community in Texas.
Right.
And then obviously when you go to Florida, it's Cubans and Puerto Ricans and um like was it El Salvador or Nicaragua's there as well. And then when you go to New York, it's obviously a lot of Puerto Rican, like it's everything.
Yeah.
So, but it's true because um every segment of our community, although we can heavily have a lot of things in common, there are like these little differences that make a big impact.
Totally. Mm-hmm.
And people and corporations and people need to understand that and realize that you can't just speak to everybody like they're Mexican. You can't just speak to everybody
Right.
like they're Cuban. Like you have to do the work to
Right.
be to differentiate and be able to connect with all of the different communities here. I was looking on your website because you have several masterclass replays. You have how to earn more money from your business than you did your job, how to launch and scale your business during a down market, which I think is right now. I think a lot of people are feeling that right now. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Building your personal brand, becoming a keynote speaker. You have links to your podcast. You have a free resource as well. So if people just kind of want to get like a sense of who you are and what you're doing, they can
Mm-hmm.
this free resource. What does that free resource provide them?
Yeah, so it is a basically a toolkit of how to start and grow your business without losing your financial security. So I walk you through a framework to help you get started without you having to guess, right? I walk you through the framework. It's about 15 minutes long, but there's tons of info in there. And then after you watch it, if you're like, you know what, I'm ready, like, let's do this, you have an opportunity to book a call with me so that we can explore kind of like where you are and see if we are a good fit to work together. It's also a strategy session. So you'll get some advice from me as well. But the point is for you to like make this a reality, right? Because a lot of us tend to do a lot of talking and less action. And I want to work with people who are like about taking action, right? And getting things done. And so that call is an opportunity for those folks.
That is that no, that's so great. And that's so awesome that you're able to do that because I think what would you suggest for people who maybe aren't just starting out? Maybe they've started and they're stuck, or maybe they're started and they thought they had a framework, or they, they get lost in the sauce, so to speak.
Yeah.
What do you
So
recommend for those people?
Yeah. So I work with two types of women, right? I work with women who are still in corporate trying to make the transition, and I work with women who have been in business less than 5 years and they're kind of like stuck. They're at this point where they're like, I need to pivot. I need to do something
That's
else.
me.
Yeah. I need to pivot. I do something else. And there's a couple of ways that we can work together. In some instances, the academy is the best place for you because even though you've been in business for 5 years, you may not have a strong foundation. You might have been winging it. So you don't know business strategy. You don't know tax strategy. You don't know how to leverage credit. You don't know how to get certified. You don't know the mindset work. You don't know how to do business with corporate. So, it really depends on where you are. Or if you're more seasoned and you're like, no, I have my foundation, I have structure, I just need a strategy to get me to point Z, then I have something called the VIP day, where we spend 6 hours together and we basically tear apart your entire business model and build out a strategy depending on what your goal is over the next 6 to 12 months. We build out an entire strategy. So a step by step, what you need to do over the next 12 months to reach whatever your goal is.
So we talked about where you came from. We talked about what you're doing.
Yes.
What's next? What's next for you? What are you looking forward to?
So next for me is building out Banking on Cultura. I see it becoming its own, it is a media platform right now, but it being on a much larger scale. So right now I'm collaborating with brands. I am working on building it out as an income stream and really taking it to the next level and spending the majority of my time pouring into my community and giving them the tools and resources that they need to start and grow their business. So that is my main focus moving forward.
I always let people like give them a few minutes to share if there's anything we didn't touch on, any parting words, anything that you want to share, please do so now.
Oh, yes. So I would love to invite your community to join me in New York City. I am hosting my annual Secure the Big Bag and Wellness Summit. It is going down in November, and I'm going to give you the dates here. So November 15th and 16th, it's a Friday and Saturday, so make it a weekend, girls' weekend. Come outside, come to New York. And that is going to be a great place for you to get strategies and tangible ways for you to not only structure your business so that you are able to bring in consistent revenue, but learn about different things that you can invest in as an entrepreneur so that you can just achieve financial freedom as a whole, right? It's not just about your business, it's also about personally. How are you growing? How are you thriving spiritually, mentally, emotionally, financially? So there's the business component and then there's a wellness component. So we're creating that hybrid of the two. So I'll send you the link so folks can sign up. But that's going down in November, and it's a really great opportunity for you to position yourself for success going into 2025, but also get in tune with a dope community. Entrepreneurship is lonely. Like you need your business besties. Like you need people who are gonna hold you down, who are gonna go through the trenches with you, but you also need people that you can learn from.
Yeah.
Like people that actually have a different skill set than you that are able to really help you and position you. I was just having a conversation with a girlfriend of mine who's an intellectual property lawyer. That's not my area of expertise, but I need to protect my brand. I need to protect my IP. And because she's my business bestie, like she's putting me on and she's telling me like what I need to do to set myself up and to protect myself. Like you need those type of people in your network on this journey because it's hard and you need people to kind of help you keep going and to remind you of your badassery and to like feed you the knowledge that you need so that you can work smarter instead of harder. You know what I mean?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely, you need those people
Yes,
because it is lonely, especially, when you work from home, it can be even lonelier. I mean, I love my dogs, but damn, it can be.
totally. That's one thing I miss about corporate. I'm not gonna lie. I definitely
Yeah.
miss the fact that there was a community there already,
Yeah.
and I could have friends at work. Now it's like I have to go seek it out myself.
Well, I'm gonna be in New York in the end of September.
Okay.
So I'm gonna have to reach out to you. I won't be
Oh,
there. I
reach
think I'll
out to
still
me.
be recovering from my surgery in November, but I'll reach out to you.
Okay.
when I'm in New York, because I'm gonna have a couple of things going on while I'm there. So, um, Victoria, thank you. I mean, an hour flies by so quickly, doesn't
I
it?
know it does. Can I tell them where they can connect with me on social
Yeah.
media?
Oh, yes. I was gonna
Because
ask
I
you.
want them to DM me and tell me that they came through this podcast, and that's how we're
Yes.
connected. Because I love when that happens. So you can connect with me on social media at I am Victoria Jenn. So that's IAM Victoria JENN. That's on all social platforms. Or you can connect with me on LinkedIn at Victoria Jenn Rodriguez. Or you can visit my website, victoriajenn.com.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing your story, for like
Thank you
just
for
giving
having
so
me.
much insight because it's so, so important. I love, you know, when I was coming up, it was really hard to find other supportive Latinas. It wasn't until I was in my 30s that it started happening. But it always felt like, oh, well, one of us is here. It was just always felt like a competition. And now to find so many women who are out there wanting to help other Latinas and other ethnicities, all communities of color who are like, no, we got to help each other. We got to support each other. I went through this. So let me tell you what I went through so you don't have to go through it. It's
Okay.
so vital. So
Yes.
thank you so much for sharing that and providing so many amazing resources.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, Mama.
Thank you. Until next time, mi gente.
Hola, mi gente. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Wine and Chisme podcast. If you would like to hear more wine and more chisme, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Saludos.